Hey, welcome. Thank you for joining us for the Town of Corte Madera Parks and Recreation Master Plan Community Engagement. This is the second public meeting we've hosted, and we appreciate you being here. My name is Ashley. I'm your Parks and Recreation Director, and I'm joined and moderating with Louise Felton Brown, who is our co-chair of the Parks and Recreation Commission, and Ryan Murray, who is our representative from ETC Institute, who conducted the survey for us in May. So we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome and thank you for joining us. We intended to host community meetings in person, but due to the ongoing impact of COVID-19, it was not possible. I want to acknowledge that our meeting timeline has been delayed in hopes of in-person meetings. It was originally September to November, and it's now November to January. The intention of the community engagement meetings is to gather additional feedback and insights needed to prioritize projects and potential investments for the next 3 to 10 years. These meetings are an important part of Parks and Recreation Master Plan process and are an extension of the community survey that was delivered to all Corte Madera residents in May of 2021, and in addition to small groups held in November and December with community interest groups. It's important to emphasize that no decisions will be made or committed to as a result of these meetings. Feedback will be used to conclude the master plan project and outline priorities for us to focus on. Specific projects will continue to be vetted, and the community will have an opportunity to provide feedback during potential considerations and possible planning or development. We are recording both community engagement meetings in order to broadly share our valuable discussions with community members who are not able to attend. Links to the recordings will be posted on the Parks and Recreation Master Plan page of the town website. Next, we'll move into our breakout rooms in order to have constructive discussions. And we're not going to move into breakout rooms with this smaller group. So we're going to be holding everything here, but we'll start talking about the breakout room topics that were discussed last night. And we want to have constructive discussions on specific topic areas. Each of the topics will be moderated by one of us, and we'll have set prompts to collect additional feedback for you. We do not have our survey tool for today since we'll have a small group, so we'll just be taking annotated notes and really hope that you share candid responses, and we appreciate your time and attention. We recognize that different topics are important to different people, and we appreciate if you hang in there with us and stay through all of the topics, because your opinions and your feedback is important to us and important to the process. Let's see. It's important that attendees participate in each topic area, like I said, and we don't need to break up. So I'm going to just jump ahead. We'll just jump into the first topic. And I do, because we have Zoom and I'm moderating and discussing, I'm going to be adding people in because people are going to be confusing. So I'll kind of pause a little bit and try to catch people up just in case we have some people that are joining us later. So for the about next 20 minutes, we're going to be discussing the topic of public restrooms and indoor facilities. Both topics could easily take more than 20 minutes for us to discuss. So I'm going to help us keep the conversation moving. Addressing the need for improved restroom facilities and parks is a top priority of both staff and town council. Currently, there are basic temporary units in Town Park, Granada Park, and Menke Park. Focusing discussion on Town Park today, there is currently one permanent restroom on the west side of the park between the tennis courts and the skate park, and that the town made improvements to in 2020. Unfortunately, the facilities have continued to not meet the needs or expectations of the community and have also been routinely vandalized. We recognize that even with the additional units rented by the town, the community deserves permanent facilities that are clean and can accommodate the volume of users through the busy months of field and park use. We want your help gauging the community's preference regarding removing porta potties, replacing units with upgraded or semi-permanent trailer facilities, or focusing instead on the planning and installation of permanent amenities. We would like your feedback on whether town staff should spend time researching to replace the blue porta potties with upgraded units, recognizing that monthly fees will also increase, or keep the existing units while staff focuses on developing plans to install permanent facilities. So our first question is really asking you for prioritization help. 1, replacing current porta potties with an upgraded temporary option that might delay the installation of permanent facilities and increase monthly expenses. Or 2, if you prioritize keeping the current units and focusing resources on developing permanent facilities as soon as possible. And please note that as soon as possible could roughly still be 18 to 24 months following the town's planning process for a town project. Okay, so for a raise of hands, the first one was Please indicate if you would prefer priority be on replacing current porta potties with an upgraded temporary option that might delay the installation of permanent facilities and increase monthly expenses. So show of hands. See 1, 2. Okay. Okay, and the second option for raising hands is to keep the current units and focus instead on focusing resources that staff and town finances, developing permanent facilities as soon as possible.
I dialed in via phone, but I'd like to vote for that option, please.
Sure.
Yeah,
I'm going to try to vote.
I would too. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm
Looks like
another person that dialed in.
Okay.
it looks like we have 4, Ashley. One is a
Thank
raised
you.
hand from the previous vote.
Thank you. Okay, and if everybody can put their hands down. Great. And so now I'd really like to hear some feedback on why you choose or one priority over the other. Who would like to elaborate on
I'll
that?
fill out so my kids play soccer, and that's actually the restroom is more than just a restroom. It's actually a changing station for every kid that has a 3 o'clock practice. The porta potties are routinely wet, are not clean, and so kids can't get changed in there or do anything other than, and even they don't use the restroom there. We actually go to Verde, or we go to one of the more permanent facilities.
Thank you. Don't be shy. I really want to know what you have to say.
Hi, this is Ashley Eklund. I dialed in via phone. I'm trying to join via Zoom in just a minute, but
Okay.
yeah, I would add that I think it makes sense to just focus resources towards a longer term sustainable option of more permanent bathrooms and just put that, even if it takes 18 to 24 months, following the process, I'd just like to see that done because I think it's a better fit for this, for the space to have a true bathrooms. I'd like to see the resources focused towards that.
I agree. I voted the wrong way, so you can delete the vote.
Okay, no
for
problem. I got you,
choice
Sandy.
one. Sorry.
That's okay.
Hi, this is Joe Vigil. I'm in agreement. I think my vote was for the second option. I think it's a better use of the county's resources and budgets to focus on a long-term solution.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please go ahead.
Oh, good. Say, let me ask you a question. I'm not sure I completely understood the 2 options. Could you briefly repeat them? The first one was to keep the present porta potties. Could you explain that more, please?
Sure. The first one was actually to remove the porta potties and replace them with another upgraded temporary. So if you've seen it at larger events, there's trailers that come in with what they call luxury units. So it's an upgraded temporary solution. So it would be increasing the monthly expenses the town's putting out to have another temporary but better than the blue porta potties, while we also still plan to put in permanent facilities.
And how long would that last, the upgraded portable facility?
Well, getting any kind of permanent situation will be at least 18 to 24 months, but it will extend the time if we put in if we spend time researching and spending money on another upgraded temporary solution. I don't have a quantitative number of how long that might delay.
It would be a cost benefit analysis, I think, but I just wonder if it's going to take 18 months, and one option we keep the present porta potties, the other option is for that interim period, we get a better porta potty. Maybe that I lean in favor of that. You kind of accomplish both things, but I don't know the cost of those 2 options.
The PR, the public relations
you.
director. She's the leadership.
Okay, any additional questions? Or feedback, please. Okay. Hearing none, we can move into the second part of the bathrooms, which is asking preferred locations. Right now we have at Town Park, we have at the playground, which is the northeast side of the park. And I'm going to share my screen so we can have a better visual. Find the right screen here. Okay, can everyone see the map of the park?
Yes.
Okay, so right now we have temporary facilities at the playground, which is up at the north east of the park. We have a permanent restroom that's between the tennis courts and the skate park. And then we have temporary units behind the community center. And right now we currently don't have anything that serves the east side or a dog park. So this is my question to you is when we install permanent facilities of some kind, which would be later discussed in public meetings, where would be the ideal locations? Where would you prefer to have facilities?
What you have now works, I think.
So you suggest replacing the temporary units with permanent facilities?
Yes, especially by so the one that exists today. I think you should update or make that as best you can. I would actually add one onto the community center, right there, and that'd be it.
I agree with one by the rec center. That parking lot.
Thank you.
This is Joe. I think having one on the east side of the park has a lot of advantages. For my kids that use the play structure by Neil Cummins, as well as that playing field there. It's a long journey to get over towards the skate park or the temporary bathrooms.
And is that the east side or that's the north side?
So we refer to this area as the east side.
Oh, east side, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it's in that area, I would suggest over by the parking area in that on Mohawk, you have the houses that back onto the park there. It seems it would be more convenient up in that corner anyway.
Are you talking about right here or down here?
Up to near the parking. I don't think you, yes.
This is school district property.
Yeah.
So it can't go on school district property.
Right. Well,
how far does
technically
school-
part of this is school district property. Yesterday's group also suggested maybe asking the district what they felt about putting a restroom potentially right here. And another site was talking about if we used, I'm going to zoom into the map here. If we added something that's right here, since a lot of people are used to going to Cafe Verde, seeing about a potential to add a restroom here was discussed.
That could work.
So would that be the only restroom for the whole park?
No. This is
Okay.
another question to everybody. How many restrooms would be the ideal? Not that we can accomplish everything in one go, but we really want to be able to service. Right now, my feeling is we have got temporary restrooms spaced around. Are those locations serving the needs if they were better restrooms? Would we want to add restrooms to all of the current locations, or do we want to move things around? This is just
Is there plumbing everywhere? Like you talk about the east side of the field. Do we have to dig up the whole field to get irrigation and get water and sewage?
It depends on where you would go. We'd have to figure out what the utility
So I think
access would be.
if you could stick to where the permanent buildings are today and just add a permanent restroom outside of them.
Mhm.
That's easy
I
on the.
agree with that.
Yeah, I think the current location, there's so many facilities in that area with the skate park and the tennis courts and the playground. And I mean, toddlers need quick access to a bathroom. So I think that's a good location.
Yeah,
If kids are playing games or soccer, they can run to the bathroom, right?
I really think the existing location behind the community center it's adequately served, but like Mike was saying, I think having restrooms adjacent to an existing building or existing asphalt location is better, even closer to the dog park on the east side. The larger bathroom on the west side near the tennis courts adequately serves both the playground and the soccer players that are on that side. It's the east side that's not being served, where people have to go into commercial or retail venues in order to utilize the bathroom. So I agree with Mike that it should be near existing facilities and should be more on the east side on the pathway near the parking there.
Thank you. Any additional feedback on locations or things to consider that you'd like to have heard?
I guess something that I don't think has been mentioned is that I think, again, having something close to the community center and close to Cafe Verde that's more permanent is good. I'm in agreement of that. I think it's not really fair to Cafe Verde that inevitably people do go in there to use the bathroom. It's not really fair to them as a small local business. So I've done it. I know people do it all the time. So I think something either where the existing blue porta potties are near the rec center or the other location that was mentioned, sort of right close to Cafe Verde outside of there.
Great,
But I have toddlers, and I agree that something very close to the enclosed playground at Town Park is needed as well. Or as an adult, if I have kids in that park, I can't leave the park. I can't, I can go to those porta pots right there, right outside the fence, but I can't go across the fields or down to the tennis courts. So I think the existing locations are pretty good.
Thank you for mentioning that. Last night in one of the meetings that was also brought up, or one of the meeting groups that was brought up, and I mentioned that industry standard when you're building playgrounds and you're redoing them in any way and you're looking at restrooms, there's usually a push to have a restroom that has access from within the park area, in the playground area. So if you have an enclosed playground area, you have a restroom that you can access so that when parents have multiple children, you don't have to ship everybody out to go to an outside external restroom, but you can have one child go into the restroom while you're still monitoring another child within the park playground area. So that's something that's nice to be able to talk about in these meetings as well.
Agree. I agree with that. I agree with that, and have lots of friends in the area who would agree.
Any other restroom questions before we move on to the other topic we have? Right, I'm going to go ahead and stop screen sharing so we can see each other. It's a lot easier to have our dialogue. Okay, thank you very much for your feedback on restrooms. Moving into indoor facilities, they are vital to the services and programs offered by the Parks and Recreation Department. The existing community center consists of one large room with a stage, bar, gas fireplace, attached commercial kitchen, lobby with restrooms, 2 small storage rooms, the Parks and Recreation Department office, and a narrow green room behind the stage. There's also an attached patio with small stage that is enclosed for the greater town park area. While the facility functions well for events and large groups of about 250 people, there's limited ability to host multiple events or programs simultaneously, and there's no classrooms on site to operate recreational classes or to host smaller group meetings. The Parks and Recreation Department is currently able to offer after-school classes at both elementary schools and a child care center at Neil Cummins. While staff is grateful to use classrooms, times are limited to non-school hours, which precludes the ability to offer classes during the day. Staff would like the ability to offer simultaneous classes and programs at the community center in order to expand services for adult and preschool participants. Continuing the discussion of restrooms, if the community center were modified, there could be an opportunity for restrooms to be added that serve both indoor users as well as park visitors. If renovation or modification of the community center is not supported, another option to add facility space needed to expand programming and services is to consider acquiring additional space at the adjacent Park Madera Plaza. Park Madera Plaza is owned by the town and could be considered as potential space for recreation programming in the future. For example, the town assumed supervision of a small dance studio at the center in 2019. So my question to you is, help us understand your preference on what staff and the town should pursue whether it be one, renovating the community center in some way. So whether it means adding on to it, changing how it's constructed inside, modifying it at all, we want to know how you want us to focus our time. So renovating the community center, or 2, acquiring space at Park Madera Center as leases expire. So show of hands if you would support renovating the community center.
Can I ask a quick question? Where is
Sure.
the Park Madera Center?
Park Madera Center is where Cafe Verde is. So that whole shopping center where the yes.
Got it. Thank you. Sorry, I don't know if you want to ask again. Sorry about
That's
that.
okay. So yeah, I'm looking for a priority between one or the other. So whether we look at explore options of making the community center a little bit more versatile and changing it in some way, or whether time should be focused on assuming locations at Park Madera Center and possibly a further design over there. So
Actually, I saw
one.
I saw 3 hands raised for renovating the community center.
Thank you.
Okay, to have some,
I would raise my hand as well to renovate.
Okay, that actually
there?
brings us to 5.
Okay, 5. Great, thank you.
may
I'll add to that as well. Sorry,
6.
raise hand for that one.
may we discuss briefly?
Well, let's take a poll first, and then we can go back.
Okay.
And if
Oh,
anybody wants
sorry.
to change their mind, then we can
Okay.
do
Sorry.
that. No problem. No, I appreciate the candid conversation. It's really nice to be able to have a smaller group so that we can all hear what everyone has to say instead of go through breakout rooms. So the second option was to pursue more time and resources on looking at assuming locations at Park Madera Center. One.
D1.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, now let's discuss. Why did you feel one way or the other?
Well, I like that the present rec center, it has such a history, and it's a unique and distinct building that has a lot of memories there. It is showing its age, but it's a good foundation of a building for improvement and perhaps expansion. Seems to me, if you go over to the area where the pet club is in that area, that's a brand new undertaking. The advantage is more space there, and you could have 2 buildings, which could be nice, but I'm thinking maybe it's all things considered, it's going to be very expensive to build something there.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I agree. I just want to chime in a little bit of piggyback off what he just said in the first part of his statement. I also have a lot of, I think a lot of people too, and friends with it, myself, have memories of all kinds of different events at the flagship building, and it's sort of symbolic of having something to take pride in the town, and that is sort of the center location. I don't know. There's sentimental reasons, and those probably aren't good reasons, but I just feel like one location that everyone's proud of and stands behind is why I'd probably prefer it versus over by the shopping center.
Thank you.
One thing that I think about is the businesses in that shopping center. I'm pretty familiar with several of them. So again, I mean, obviously they might, if their leases expire and there's an opportunity there, I see why that's an opportunity, but I think about that as a good place for small businesses and ones that I've utilized, like the trainer who's there, the nail salon, the others, a laundromat, which, serves the community. So I think that those are important. It would be important to keep those spaces as available for small businesses that serve the community. So
thank you.
Seems a little bit disjointed to have like the central rec center and then have other space over in the park plaza, or I'm not calling it the right thing. Sorry.
The center. You could just say the center.
The center. And I also think about ways to segment the existing space or renovating the current rec center in ways to perhaps might be a more temporary solution, but ways like not permanent walls, like ways to section off space for smaller groups or smaller classes is one thing that came to mind.
This is Joe. I agree with the last comments. I think there's better ways to probably utilize the space that we already have. I don't know on the current utilization rate for the existing community center, but my guess and from what I've seen is it's not fully utilized to its full potential. And unless that were to happen, I don't think there would be a need or warrant to pursue a separate location with additional space that may not be utilized to a full extent. So I would support looking at ways to repurpose or to further better utilize the existing space that we have.
Thank you.
On that note, I won't go into too much detail here. I joined just a couple minutes late, so I didn't get to mention this, but I'm one of two presidents of the Corte Madera Larkspur Mountains Club, and we have rented the rec center for larger events that we've had in the past. And I think about the possibility to rent the rec center for a smaller group or on sort of perhaps like an off-peak time, maybe like renting it for a lower price or renting it more last minute if it's not used. So I think about that, like if a group wants an off-peak time or a group is interested in, hey, we want 20 people in the large space, but we'll pay less for it at an off-peak time. I don't know. I think about that as an options too.
Any other feedback on either topic?
I've voted for the other option because I think the current rec center is way too small. You know, you see community centers in other cities like Mill Valley, and, you know, granted they're well utilized. So, you know, like Joe and other people were saying, if we're going to have new space and it's not going to be utilized, then it's a total waste. But if it would be utilized and it backs up to the dog park, so I mean, it's not like it's a completely separate location. It is right there adjacent to the park. So I mean, if you used it for sports, you know, sports related activities. I mean, you know, we don't have a preschool, and all the preschools are all fully booked. It's like impossible to get kids into preschool. So I feel like there's a lot of expansion that the community center could be doing, and I don't see how that's possible in the existing space. And if you try to make it bigger, it's going to take away from the fields. So, you know, I just don't see how you can make it a community center, you know, that our town can really utilize and be proud of in such a small space. You know, I don't know if the answer is the shopping center, but I do know that the current one is not sufficient for our town, or that's what I feel. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Right. There is in the background the question about that shopping area, and going back in time, I think the town bought it with the intention of doing something with it, like another rec center or whatever, a swimming pool or something. And that's been pending for quite a while. Maybe, I don't know how much the town makes off of that, but it is an area that was obtained originally, I think, to put to some use for the town.
Yeah, I mean, some kind of indoor, you know, well, the hope is that it continues raining in Northern California. So, I mean, I don't know if you put racquetball or I mean, there could be indoor uses that are not just the main hall of the community center that I think people would use just to provide more recreation in our community. But, you know, who knows if people would actually use it.
That Pet Club building is pretty large inside.
It is big. There was talk about about the baseball place moving there, but I think it's not big enough.
Huh.
Mentioned, was it Line Drive?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Line Drive.
Great. Any last questions or comments on either renovating the community center or pursuing time and resources on looking at opportunities at Park Madera Center? Okay. Hearing none, I appreciate all your feedback. We will have time at the end after we go through each of the topic areas to add additional feedback. So if you have things that come up in your head, please make a note, and we'd love to hear them at the end of the summaries. So next I'm going to be moving over to Louise. She's going to take the next topic.
Great, thanks, Ashley. So we're going to spend the next 20 minutes talking about two specific outdoor facilities that we could pursue as part of the master plan: artificial turf fields and a community swimming pool. And each of these topics, I'm sure, could take the full 20 minutes. So I'm going to try to keep the conversation moving. With this small group, I'm hoping that everybody has an opportunity to voice their full opinions, and we'll give you every chance to do that we can. We're going to start with artificial turf fields. The school district has expressed an interest in working with the town to evaluate installation of artificial turf fields at both Town Park and Cove Park. At Town Park, the East Field, and you saw that earlier when Ashley pulled up a map, the East Field is partially owned by the school district and currently operates under a shared use agreement. Portions of Cove Park are also operated under a shared use agreement. The school district is interested in having a field available to students for year-round use. At Cove, there's currently no gym, and when the fields are muddy, there is nowhere for students to engage in outdoor activity. Interest in an artificial turf field has also been expressed by several sports leagues that regularly use our parks. We've heard from some members of the community about possible benefits and also concerns. Benefits of artificial turf include year-round use, reduced water use, and lower maintenance costs related to mowing, repairing divots, etc. Concerns include reduction of natural green space, heat absorption by the artificial material, and concerns in general over the use of synthetic material. So I'd like to take an informal poll by raise of hands, as we did previously. And I'm going to ask you about your level of interest in installing artificial turf fields, and then we'll open it up for some discussion. So first, please raise your hand if you would support the installation of one or more artificial turf fields in our parks.
I'm raising my hand.
Okay, seeing 6. Okay, thank you. If you raised your hand with the icon, if you could take that down so we don't double count you. Please raise your hand now if you do not support installation of artificial turf fields in one of our parks. Okay, I'm seeing 3 against. Okay, we're going to open it up for comments in a minute, but for those of you who would support these fields, where do you think the priority should be placed between Town Park and Cove Park? First, I'm going to ask for those who think the priority should be placed on Town Park.
Well, so I'll just chime in. It depends if, so is it like you would have to choose for this part of the conversation between one or the other? I'd say the Town Park.
Yes, I'm forcing a choice right now. It's not necessarily
okay.
ultimately a choice.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
I would say Town Park, because it would benefit more people.
Okay, I see 6 for Town Park. Okay, if you could take your hands down if you raised your hand previously. Now, who would support having the priority be over at Cove Park?
For those who voted no, can we vote in this part or not?
Of course.
All right, then I'd vote for Cove Park.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I do want to give you all an opportunity to talk about why you voted the way you did and make sure that we're taking into consideration any thoughts that you have around the benefits or concerns that should be considered as we further look into artificial turf fields for the town.
Is this, can I ask a question? Is this, sorry for the question, but is this specifically, like you said, related to one versus the other, or are you opening it up to?
I'm opening it up.
Why, okay. Why the advantages of turf versus fields versus not having turf, right?
Why you voted the way you did, either for or against.
Okay.
And if you want to talk about prioritization as well, I'll listen to those comments too.
Yeah, I think mine are with, I have 3 children and they're all actively over there in different leagues and all kinds of sports over there, mostly soccer. But I think I've seen personally from my point of view with my family that they are not as active during the year. when they can't use the fields, which is very often. And then we're trying to figure out things to keep them healthy and, keep them active. And it just keeps them year round off the fields a lot more when there's grass. So for health reasons, keeping kids active and, keeping them consistent, I think, and healthier, I think that's one big thing. I think the risk I've seen firsthand and many, many, many times over the past 5 or 6 years of kids getting hurt on the fields. And I think that's a huge point of these divots and holes. And I mean, the fields were pretty awful. So that is a concern as well. Those are my two big ones. I'd rather, hear from other people too, but those are my two big ones.
Great. Thank you very much.
I'd add on just to that, like the fields are worthless 3 to 4 months of the year. It's where all of our athletics go on. It's not just soccer. There's rugby, there's lacrosse, all those things would utilize it. If we're really looking at a utilization of something, you can't beat getting turf in there. It would be utilized year round. So if we truly are a community that wants an active community, that's a definition of it.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna call on people. I see hands raised. C. Winship.
Hi, my name's Cindy Winship, and
Hi, Cindy.
I have helped run the Corte Madera FC competitive program since it started, I think, 8 years ago. And I just think putting turf in makes sense because of the drought and because of the constant maintenance. The other thing we deal with is that the fields at Town Park are not designated as sports fields. So as a result, we can never cut the grass to the right height for, proper soccer fields. And because they're designated as just outdoor space, but the reality is they're used 5-6 months of the year as sports fields. So I just feel like we've come to a point in our community where a lot of teams and a lot of youth, I think our Corte Madera soccer, including the rec program, has over 1,000 kids who play. And we would just be able to use the fields without worrying about trashing them and without worrying about the water and people getting hurt and the divots. And I just think moving forward, we have become a really great community soccer program, but without access to good fields, it's not going to be sustainable.
Great, thanks, Cindy. Trisha. If you can hear us, Trisha, we see you're on mute. Okay, I think we lost her. Maybe she will come back on.
There I am. Hi,
Oh,
sorry.
That's okay.
I'm on Zoom on my phone and I
Okay.
couldn't find the button. Yes, my name is Trisha Lacey. I have 3 daughters, 2 soccer players. One plays for Marin FC and high school, and my other daughter plays for Corte Madera. And I just want to echo everything that has already been said. The issue of access to fields is huge. There are not enough fields in Marin, period. And then when the rains come, all of my girls, their games are canceled left and right, and it's really, really challenging. While we have had a lot of recent water, we also know that the drought and climate change will continue to be an issue. So watering it is an issue. And then likewise, when the rains come, there just isn't proper drainage, and then you can't use them either. And as someone brought up, the condition of the field, especially on East Corte Madera, is at times terrible and dangerous. And I know someone, or in your introduction, you brought up the issue of the safety of turf. And I think that that has come a long way. I think that there are turfs now where you can do the coconut insert or some sort of natural fill, so there isn't the concern about using recycled rubber tires and possible carcinogen effects. And then Likewise with the heat, there are also turfs that do not absorb heat in the same way. Admittedly, it is always going to be more hot than traditional grass, but the quality of turf has improved. So I just represent a large number of parents in the community who would really support having turf fields, frankly, at either location. So I know we were forced to vote. I voted for Town Park, but really just wherever it can happen the soonest is what I would get behind. So thank you.
Thank you, Tricia. Sandy.
Basically, replacing grass with plastic is just bad news. It leaches harmful chemicals into the water. It promotes flooding. It doesn't sequester any carbon. It's just counterproductive to any, good environmental practices. And I just don't think it's a responsible action to install them. And I think the marketing says they're so much cheaper, but they do use water when they have to be cleaned. They need to be often are watered to be cooled down. And grass fields can be drained properly so that they are more usable. They definitely have their downsides, but the downsides pale in comparison to artificial plastic fields. So.
Thanks, Sandy. Yinka.
Thank you. So I think that there's substantial benefits to both sides of the argument. One of my main concerns is what I would love to see further discussion, or at least some kind of environmental impact analysis on how the field will be drained. Should it be turf? Because turf does not retain any sort of liquid. My concerns are also historical for the increased injuries from use of turf in kids' sports, and mostly because the turf doesn't give as well. Somebody mentioned turf has come a long way, so I'm open to hearing more on that. My general concern is on just how we would be able to manage that turf field from a use perspective, and also maintain it, given the high volume of use that has been described on the call already. So I think I'm definitely open to considering changing my vote to a pro if I have better understanding on just how that field, how the amount of rainfall that we're already getting will be drained and maintained off the field, as I assume that it will just run off the turf onto the adjacent field and or into the creek. So those are just my main concerns, that and just from experience, the increased injuries of use of turf field versus grass.
And then also just to add to that too, hi, I'm with Yinka, his wife, but would like to also understand, like we have, for example, a lot of nature that goes onto the grass. For example, there's birds that migrate. So how would having artificial turf impact any of the environmental and just animals who also call the park home as well? I don't have information into that, but if anyone has additional insight, just that would be very, I think, important to consider as well. Thank you.
Thank you. James. I'm sorry, I'll get to you in just a second.
Okay.
James.
Who are you calling on?
I'm calling on you.
Oh, me, thank you. So there's a big issue involved here. There have been rumors recently based on some fact, and the rumor is that a wealthy person or wealthy persons or a wealthy group or an organization, or most recently, the school district, somebody's willing to pay private money to install an artificial turf soccer field in the town park. Is that true?
No decisions have been made. Well, I'll let Ashley address that.
Yeah. No, and no funding has been proposed or suggested or offered to my knowledge.
Okay, that answer surprises me because this is a strong rumor, and it seems at some point, this leads to another question, and that is, why are artificial turf fields being pushed so strongly? This whole process began with the town survey, and if we look at the town survey, if the town wanted to have a question on there about putting artificial turf field in the town park, they could have, but they didn't. And if we look at the rank of things that people deemed important, there was a question about artificial turf fields in town, something general like that. But what was it? 17% thought that was a need that's not being met. And it was ranked number 20 on the list of priorities. So why is it now that the artificial turf field is being pushed so strongly?
And to answer that, you're absolutely correct as far as what the feedback was from the survey. And my understanding is that this conversation about artificial turf in some way at Town Park has been discussed for the last number of years preceding the survey. That's why we're discussing it again here.
But if the foundation of this whole process was the survey, why aren't we going to number 2, 3, 4, 5, 15? I just don't get why this one, somebody's pushing this, and I just wonder why.
Well, because there's been interest expressed by the school for us to explore this, we thought that these community engagement meetings would be a good opportunity to gauge and collect some additional community feedback. So we are not pushing this by any extent. We're just using this as a forum to gather the feedback, the pros and cons, and hear the interest in the community.
And again, no one, including the school district, has said anything about they're willing to pay to install the field.
No, there's been no offer of payment.
Okay, let me bring up some other considerations then.
One more thing before we move on, I wanted to address, you referenced the survey as being the initial or the platform for gaining direction on where our conversations are going. I just wanted to acknowledge that it's one of the tools that we're using to gauge feedback from the community, as is community stakeholder meetings and these community engagement meetings. We recognize that people want to participate and share information and feedback in different ways, and that's why we're reaching out in a number of different avenues.
Well, in response to that, now, if we look at the number of people who participated in the town survey, I don't know the number, but it's hundreds of people probably, right? It was a big group. And that more accurately shows what the true feeling of the residents are regarding what should be the priorities. Now, a concern about these two meetings that we're having now, one, they occurred late. Two, they're back to back right at the beginning of the year, just after the holidays. People are going back to work, they're going back to school. We're right in the middle of a virus pandemic. They're two-hour meetings. It's just not enough time to allow people to have input. And so I think that the town survey is a much stronger indication of what the people are interested in. The other is that the people who support the soccer field, they've had time to prepare and encourage people to participate here. The other people in town are just out doing their normal things, but these two meetings, I believe, are weighted heavily in favor of people who are in favor of installing artificial turf. I have a couple more points, but if you'd like me to linger, I will.
Yeah, we've got to move back to the topic of just discussing the synthetic and the potential of having artificial. And we really want to hear everyone's opinions. And by no means this is the end of the conversation on potential projects. If there's feedback and consensus that this is going to be a priority, that the town spends time researching and putting more effort into, then there will be more community opportunities to gain feedback, as well as environmental impact studies, and a lot more time spent publicizing the opportunity to share opinions.
How about giving me one more? Can you give me one more minute?
One more, and then we'll need to move on in order to cover everything else we want to talk about.
So there's one thing, putting in artificial turf. It could just be an artificial turf field and nothing else is there. So that's one thing, and that's maybe easier to swallow, but is it going to be fenced? Is there going to be seating? How many people are you going to use it? Where are they going to park? How much traffic is it going to create? Where are the restrooms that they're going to use? Instead of just a field with artificial turf on, it could become a big facility with lights and fences and seating stands and restrooms, and it has a lot of social impact. That town park is pretty small, and this would put it right in the middle of the town park, the most scenic part of the park. So the question isn't as easy, do you want artificial turf or not? The bigger question is, well, what kind of artificial turf facility is it going to be, and what are the implications of that?
I'm going to interrupt you just because I respect where you're coming from and you have very valid concerns and questions, but those are all questions that would come later. There are details that would need to be discussed at a later date. Right now, we're just trying to gauge support for pursuing any kind of development ideas or concept that we can share out later for those types of questions, which are very important going forward.
It would be better to put over in Cove Park because there's a lot more room over there. It would just be better over there. If you put it in the middle of the town park, it's going to dominate the park. Okay, I'll shut up. Thank you.
No,
thank you.
Your points are very appreciated.
I would have about the Cove is that it's actually a smaller space. And I think ideally, I mean, we're only talking about one of the fields being turfed, and we're talking about it being the East Field, which is the only full size like lacrosse, rugby, soccer field that exists in Corte Madera. The other ones are just smaller for younger kids.
So I'm going to get us moving along, and I'm
Okay.
sorry to cut us off because there are obviously a lot of people who have points of view about this, but as Ashley said, if we pursue artificial turf fields for the town, there will be many more forums for discussion and shaping of those considerations. And we've noted all of those topics that you've brought up, and any further proposal would address those issues and concerns squarely, and we will give the community many more opportunities to engage. So in the interest of time, I want to move on to a discussion around the community pool. And James, you set up that there were some key priorities identified in the community survey, and a community swimming pool was one of them. This was the top priority from the recent survey that we did last May. So we'd like to get more insight into how the community would use the pool and what features would be most important. Keep in mind that a community pool would be a significant investment both for the initial build as well as an ongoing maintenance and operations expenses that would be incurred. And so we expect that a daily use fee or membership would be required, with additional costs for classes and special programs. So we're not going to talk specifically about costs today, but usage fees might affect how you answer the questions that I'm going to ask. We think about the use of pools in three primary buckets. The first is for recreation, which is general public swim, unstructured use, playtime in the pool. Second is for exercise, things like lap swim, master swim, youth swim team, and health and wellness classes like water aerobics. And the third is specifically around learn to swim programs for youth and adults. So what I'd like to do for the purposes of setting up our discussion is to get a poll by raising hands. When you think about your household and how you would use a pool, I'd like to understand how many of you would use it for recreation, exercise, and learning to swim. And you can vote for as many of these as are relevant to you and your household. So first, for recreation, general public swim, unstructured use, and playtime. How many people would have use for that? Okay, I see 5.
I'd raise my hand.
7, thank you. Okay, how about exercise? Swim team, lap swim. If you raised your hand before and you don't need to have it raised, you see it again, 3.
I'd raise my hand again for that.
Okay, great, I see 7, thank you. And how about learn to swim programs? If you've raised your hand and you don't want to keep it up, take it down. Learn to swim, I see 3. Great.
I raise my hand again.
Raise one again. Thank you. Okay, I'd love to hear a little bit more from you about how you would use the pool, particularly if there are ways that you would be interested in having a pool meet your household's needs that I haven't already mentioned.
I would, as you stated, I would need to know more in terms of proposed costs and what would be entailed. But as a parent of young kids in the community, I will say that it has been extremely challenging to find swim lessons and learn to swim programs for young kids. Just in general, in Southern Marin, it's been very challenging to find lessons and classes. I believe I speak for a number of parents who've expressed similar challenges to me, just like lessons sell out immediately. It's very hard to get young kids in swim lessons. I think part of that's COVID and part of that's just the demand. And there's not enough spots and spaces for it.
Thank you.
I'll add on to Ashley. She's exactly right. And if you want to have lessons in Southern Marin, you got to join Bay Club. You have to join Mount Tam Racket Club, at significant expenses. And there's obviously other places that are a little bit further away, but those are in our communities.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's talk a little bit about when you would use a pool. How many of you would be interested in having access to a pool year round versus just summer? Anybody interested in year round use? See one?
Well, I think there's a local swim team called Tidal Waves that uses a pool year round, and that through COVID, the pool space has become more and more limited through renting out at College of Marin and Redwood High School. So the timeframes that are available for both a sports team, the Tidal Wave sports team, as well as adult family members, there really isn't a place to swim within Corte Madera, Larkspur, unless, as someone just mentioned, that you join either Strawberry Pool or Tam Racket Club or the Bay Club. So there's just very limited choices year round or even partially of the year. But we're a family that definitely, as adults and children on a swim team, swim year round.
Great, thank you. How many of you would use a pool just during the summertime? I have 1, 2 new hands, 3. Okay, this may have a bearing on the next question, which is whether you would prefer an indoor or an outdoor pool facility. How many of you would prefer an indoor facility? There are 2 hands raised previously. I see 1 hand, 2 hands. Okay, outdoor?
Raise my hand for that.
Okay, thanks. Great.
One more for outdoor. Sorry, I'm on my phone. I'm not sure how to raise my hand. Thanks.
Just like that. Thank you. Got you. Okay, what other features would you expect at a community pool site if we were to have the opportunity to build one? What other things would be important to you?
I'll go with a smaller kid area where, kids under the age of 3 or 4, it's a shallow pool essentially. 18 inches deep or something.
A splash pad?
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't catch what you said, Ashley.
A splash pad.
Splash pad. Mm-hmm.
Changing rooms or a locker room, maybe.
Lifeguard.
Lifeguard, I agree.
And chairs, potentially tables.
This is Russ Braun on with Kara. We really enjoyed the facility up at Terra Linda. It's a community pool sponsored by San Rafael, and it has all those things mentioned. It's outdoor. I don't know. It's got to be about 15 lanes wide, and it's got a separate child pool, and it has change rooms, and it has nice sitting area of both grass and cement for families. And so I think that's a good model to follow, to consider. Are you familiar with what facility I'm talking about?
Yes,
Intimately.
my kids there.
Yeah. So we live in Corte Madera, but we do all our swimming outside of Corte Madera.
Mhm.
Like Kara said, we go to Strawberry, we go to Terra Linda, we were going to the Y for a number of years.
Great, thank you.
A hot tub spa would be nice, but I realize that may be too much to ask for, and that it would be filled all the time and would have some maintenance issues.
I think given, one thing I wanted to say, I think depending on the size of the pool and the depth, I think diving platforms, not platforms, but diving boards would be awesome to have.
Any other thoughts about features that we should consider? Okay. So there are other ways the community could have access to a swimming pool. And one of them, some of you may be familiar with. In the past, we've had an agreement with the Best Western for a summer program using their pool. That's no longer available. But this past summer, we did have an agreement with the Redwood Pool that was made available to our community. It's an exercise pool. It's designed for lap swim. So it's about 4 to 5 feet in depth through the entire pool. So it's not made for all of these different things that we have been talking about. There's some restrictions, but I'm curious about how many of you were aware that that pool was open to the public this last summer.
I was aware it was open to the public. Maybe this is a quick question, but my understanding is that perhaps it was not as useful for young children because of the setup. But if anyone has comments, if anyone with young children used it or knows if young children used it, that would be helpful for me to know. I was definitely aware it was available. I did not personally pursue it for lap swim, but my vague understanding was that it was perhaps not the best setup for, preschool to elementary age kids.
It has some limitations. That was my next question, is if you were aware, did anybody use the pool? And I'm assuming since we only had one person aware, she's shaking her head that we did not. Okay. If the Redwood Pool were made available in the future, would you use it? Now knowing what would be possible there? Lap swim, recreation, perhaps for older children. I see 1.
Yes.
2, 3. Great. Okay. Is there anything else that you would like us to know before we move on to the next topics about a community swimming pool and considerations?
I have a quick question.
Yes, I wanted to understand. So is it for sure that a pool is coming in
No.
to the park?
No. And location has not been discussed either. So this is preliminary information gathering to augment the community survey to understand what features would be interesting to the community so that we can better assess if we can do it, where it might be, and what the trade-offs would be, both in terms of cost and allocation of resources.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, if there are no other questions, I'm going to turn this over now to Ryan, who's going to take us through the last section. And please know that after that section, we will have a chance to come back together and hear from you on any other topics that are on your mind that we haven't covered in these breakouts.
Thank you, Louise. Thanks for joining us, everybody, today. I'm Ryan Murray. I'm with ETC Institute, as Ashley mentioned kind of at the top of the meeting. My firm administered the statistically valid survey. We've got experience for about the last 40 years now administering surveys nationwide regarding these types of subjects, but we're particular subject matter experts in administering parks and recreation need assessments. So I'm going to first share my screen and show you all one of the outputs from the community survey, which was what we call this is our priority investment ratings, but these are really the top priorities based on a few questions in the survey. And these questions were designed to capture both desire, unmet needs, and importance of various programming and facility items that were listed on the survey instrument. So respondents were first asked to indicate if they or someone in their household had a need for any of these items, and then whether or not, based on that yes response, how well that need's being met. And then they were asked to select 4 of these items to indicate which ones are most important to them and the members of their households. So I'll give you just a second to review this list, and then I'll let folks kind of raise their hand. And as you raise your hand, just let me know if you think that there was anything in particular that was missing from this list, or anything that should have been added regarding programming that we should have made sure to include.
Oh, there's no pool on here.
I know it's kind of a long list, but any programming that you think was missed that we should have included as an offer on the community survey, anything that you'd like the town to either sponsor or offer themselves? People are still kind of looking at the list. Give you just a second here and we'll move on.
Oh, I don't see, this is Russ again. I don't see pool on this list.
That pool is on the facilities and amenities list. And I'm looking, I don't have them memorized. But yeah, I don't know. I don't see any pool programming here. So is that something that you think should have been mentioned? Some kind of pool programming?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. What specifically? Do you have any ideas?
Well, I think elder fitness in the pool is popular, and you know, you could also include swimming lessons for children, competitive sports like tidal waves, a number of different pool events.
Great. Anybody else see anything that maybe we missed on this list? All right. So as we can see at the top of the list, some of the top priorities are really what our firm likes to kind of tell folks is the biggest bang for our buck. But what that really boils down to is that the largest number of households are going to be impacted by the development or implementation of these types of programs. And that's really predicated on the large number of respondents who said yes, and that their needs are currently being unmet. So as we see at the top of the list, we've got weekly food truck events, outdoor concerts of performing arts, cultural events, and local history walks and talks. And first, I'd like to just specifically ask about weekly food truck events. So just by show of hands, who believes weekly food truck events would be successful if there was no other component included, you know, such as music or other entertainment? I'll read that one more time. Would weekly food trucks events be successful if there was no other component included, such as music or other entertainment? Joe thinks they would be successful. Anybody else thinking that those weekly food truck events would remain successful without any additional items? 2. All right. Who thinks that those weekly food trucks absolutely need to be in conjunction with another community activity? 2, 3. All right. See just a few there. Okay. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about frequency of use. So we know that we talk about in the survey, weekly food truck events. It was something really popular with a lot of respondents kind of showing desire to use or need to use and importance of that particular item. I've got 4 response types here, and I'll just take hands for each. So how frequently would you or the members of your household reasonably attend a weekly food truck event? Anybody in that never column? I'd never really attend a food truck event. I'm just not interested. Nobody? Once or twice a year, maybe just on special occasions. Take hands for that. What about monthly? Maybe one time a month, one of the 4 events per month. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And anybody attend?
For that too.
Would anybody attend weekly? Okay, every week I'd mosey on down to the food trucks. James, did you fall into that monthly category?
Yes.
All right. All right. So next I want to talk a little bit about cultural events and local history walks and talks. Basically, I'd just kind of like to see a show of hands if you have any suggestions for what type of programming the town might be able to sponsor with regard to, cultural events or history walks and talks or other subject matter talks or things like that. Any suggestions for cultural events or community events that the town should consider? James, do you have any suggestions? If not, I'll go to Robert.
Music, any type of music, big, small, music.
Is that captured in outdoor concerts and performing arts?
Oh,
though?
I'm sorry. It may be, I'm not aware of that category.
Yeah, it could be. I think it's still a good response for the type of cultural events that folks would like to see. Robert?
I think local history or Central Marin history, and also environmental walks, environmental concerns related to climate change, loss of our wetlands, things like that.
Great. Anybody else with any suggestions on what type of events you'd like to see in town? Cultural variety or others? So if the town were to offer these on a weekly basis, obviously maybe the subject would change. But how often would we reasonably attend these types of events, cultural history events in town? Would it be anybody in the never category? And it's just not my thing. I'm not interested in that type of activity. Right, what about once or twice a year? Maybe just on special occasions or when family come into town. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, 6. Anybody in the monthly category? Once a month, I'd like to participate in something like this. And what about the weekly user, the habitual user of the cultural history events? All right, it's probably not a need for weekly then. All right. Great.
One more comment, please, and
Yeah,
that
please.
is, speaking of cultural, what about cultures? Monthly, in the summertime, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, things like that.
Yep. Last call on any programming, anything that we missed, anything that you'd like to offer as a suggestion on the programming before we switch over to the facility side. So next, I'm going to show you the facilities items. So again, same analysis, different topics that were discussed. For those of you who took the survey, I know this was kind of a long question on the survey. Again, we asked all respondents to indicate if they or a member of their household had a need for any of these facilities. Based on those yes responses, those respondents were asked to indicate how well those needs are currently being met. And then we asked which 4 of those facilities or amenities were most important to them and the members of their household. So what we have at the top here is public swimming pool, trails, steps and pathways, and park benches to relax, read, and enjoy nature. Oh, sorry about that. Anything on this list that we missed? I'll give everybody just a moment to kind of take a look and make sure. Got an idea there? Robert, what did we miss?
Oh, I don't know if it's on there or not, but one of the things that came up in the earlier meetings was the need to have some more permanent bathrooms created in the park.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. And just so everybody's aware, nationally, we don't typically include restrooms on this type of analysis. So it's just something we don't typically include, primarily because those restrooms are typically going to be associated with parks and other facilities. So yeah, maybe something we should have considered in an additional question for, but definitely something missing from this list. Anything else? Any other facilities that you would have liked to have been offered on this list as an opportunity to respond? Yes, I have a need and that need's not being met. Or just general importance of other facilities that you've seen that you'd like to see in Corte Madera? Robert, did you have something? I'm not sure if you just came off of mute.
No.
No? Okay.
I don't see basketball court. Oh, yeah, I do. Never mind. Sorry.
Anything surprise us about this particular breakdown of this list here? Okay.
I think it's surprising that sports facilities are also low in general. Most of the like team sport type activities are all very low on the list. And there's a lot of families here, so that's surprising to me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And as was mentioned in an earlier conversation, that the artificial turf fields is sort of middle of the list. And I do think that's a strong need for many in the community, many families with kids in sports.
I would definitely second that. I would have thought that the all-weather turf fields would have been up in a higher percentage. So it just makes me think not, maybe we didn't have the survey turnout reaching every family, or maybe they just didn't turn them in.
All right, anything else? All right. I don't know, Ashley, Louise, if you have any, oh yeah, please, Russ.
It's Charles.
Oh, Charles, excuse me.
So, I think you went through the statistics a little bit more with the council previously when it first came through. And I think, it's important for everyone to understand some of these metrics behind it instead of just showing them the list. The reason that the fields, because what I understood of the way that your survey works is it's aggregating on previous questions, right? So it's balancing if the fields are okay, but this is the one that people are unsatisfied with. And then therefore, if we invest in this, we'll get more kind of point, it's a ranking. It's not just based on previous feedbacks throughout the entire survey. And that's why it might have aggregated that way. Because if you're okay with the fields because we had them, I think that there's that kind of background. Not that we have time to get into it, but I think that's why they're surprised, because they don't, they might not have attended the previous meetings where we discussed that.
Yeah, and while the survey turnout was really superior for the size of the community, only about 1 in 5 households have a children, and that aligns really well here with this all artificial or all weather artificial turf fields, at about 1 out of 5 respondents indicating someone in their house has a need for that field. So that's really why that item struggled to get up the list. And you're kind of right, Charles, is that the first question was yes or no, do you have a need? From there, we asked respondents to indicate how well that need's being met. But we have to keep in mind only 1 out of 5 respondents were then indicating to this particular question about all weather turf fields. And then the importance of that item was ranked based on the sum of the top 4 responses for folks, and only about 8% of respondents indicated it was one of the top priorities for them or their household. So again, understanding aggregate responses is correct, but that's kind of how the analysis works out, leading to this particular table again. So.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thanks for the background.
Yep. Robert, did you have another comment? I'll take your notes, and then I'll probably let Ashley or Louise drive unless we've got more items for the priorities for the
Yeah, I was just going to comment on the trail steps and pathways. Now, those weren't really broken down, and I don't know whether more people just want level trails they can walk on. But the steps and pathways, especially on Christmas Tree Hill, Chapman, those are also important as evacuation routes in the event of wildfire. So I don't know if that was one of the reasons that came out also, but those are sort of dual use type of activities, you might say.
Thanks for bringing that up. Anything else before I hand the steering wheel back over?
I think to Bob's point, if we could elaborate a little bit on that, we would be very curious to know what those 2 items mean to the people that are attending today, as far as the trail steps and pathways. And then also with the benches, because those also yielded a high support. Just hoping for information on what was motivating that as a high importance in our community, so we can help address that.
I use, I'm in Chapman Park, and I use the stairways in that area and the trailways a good amount, both on as an adult and with young kids. I'd say I agree with the previous comment that thinking about the stairs as an evacuation route in the event of a fire is definitely something that makes me vote that as a priority. And just thinking about pathways and people, access to nature being good for exercise and mental health and physical health for a variety of ages in the community, using the trails for walking, biking, activities for young kids, scooters, etc.
Any trails
Outdoor-
or areas?
Sorry.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Outdoor exercising. Out in the marshland, that is an extraordinarily beautiful location to take a walk, take a bike ride, etc. In the distant past, there were problems out there, especially problems with people, dogs running off leash and killing the birds and the animals. That has improved considerably. If you haven't been out there recently, it's much better than it was, but it's a good example of what can be done. And when I think of going up on the mountain, maybe I think that that's not so easy. If you go way up to the top, there's that old, there's that Huckleberry Trail, which is very nice. And then there's that old, it's almost like a road that goes over towards Larkspur. That's a nice place to ride a bike, but it's somewhat difficult to get up there unless you drive up, and then there are only a few parking places there.
Any other specific areas of need with relation to trail steps, pathways, or maybe places in parks where benches don't exist that you'd like to have a place to sit?
More benches out in the marshland. I think there are a couple out there, not too many yet.
Joe?
Maybe even a picnic table or two.
I'm sorry, Robert. I'll get you, Robert, after Joe.
Okay.
I'm done.
Yeah, the other comment that I had was on the Camino Alto tunnel. I know there's been a lot of discussion about reopening that, but I think that would offer a huge benefit for community users to be able to bike easily between Corte Madera and Mill Valley and not have to go over the Camino Alto road itself.
Robert?
I was just going to comment on the Tainer steps that are at Chapman, that the Beautification Committee and the Corte Madera Community Foundation, would like to see those historic steps repaired and sort of put back in safer condition and good order. But Mill Valley had a program to really help redevelop some of the existing paths that were in Mill Valley. And they've done a good job with that. And we've started to do that here in Corte Madera, in part for evacuation routes and clearing some of the vegetation. But I think that's something we should continue to try to work on and improve those. I'd also comment that the trails out on the marsh, it may have been COVID that just got people out of their houses and walking and social distancing, but the increase in the number of people dog walking, biking, or just plain walking out there has increased exponentially, and we need to try to maintain those trails in good, safe order for everybody. Benches also comes up as a concern for people that maybe have limited mobility and really need to take a break, every so often. So I think all of those would be good things to continue to work on.
Any additional comments with the high priorities? And I can share that table again. If not, I'll hand things over to Ashley.
Okay, thank you. And then we're modifying a little bit since we're all in one group rather than the breakout rooms, which has been really great to have some in-depth conversation. But I know that some people have added to the meeting along the way, and you might have missed all the topics. So just to kind of review that we have had the opportunity to discuss the public restrooms, community center and Park Madera Plaza, artificial turf, community pool, and then the priority investment ratings, and understanding a little bit more of the details that went into the survey and how things were prioritized and aggregate behind it. So now we're moving into more of a general discussion. So let me get back to my location of my notes here. Okay. So along the way, moderators have taken notes, and those notes will be reviewed with town staff at a later date and possibly brought to subsequent meetings to gather additional community support. And town staff and the master plan subcommittee of the Parks and Recreation Commission will review feedback shared at both these meetings and compile information with that collected previously. The subcommittee will present a summary of community engagement at future Parks and Recreation Commission meeting and then town council. And please refer to the Parks and Recreation Master Plan website for more information and dates. It will take us a while to go through all of the data because your feedback is extremely important to us and we want to make sure that we've captured everything accurately. And now we're going to have time for open discussion. We had set kind of a 1 minute time frame for everyone to share, but I think we've got a little bit more opportunity that we can hear everybody's opinions at this point. But please keep in mind that in addition to collecting more broad conceptual ideas, we would also like to collect suggestions for smaller improvements and ideas that the town may accomplish to improve your satisfaction and involvement with the Corte Madera Parks and Recreation. We want to hear things that we can accomplish sooner than later as well. We've discussed a lot of great things that are long-term 3 to 10 year plans, but if there are smaller things that we can address or have that brought to our attention, that would be really helpful as well. So I open it up.
Well, one thought, a place where people could put a kayak or a canoe or a board in the water. There was that location over by the high school, and then it was discontinued reportedly because of it wasn't accessible for the disabled. I've always wondered about that. That was a pretty nice dock. There was a place there you could park a car, but we have Corte Madera Creek and we have the bay out there, but there's really no good place to put a little kayak or anything in the water.
Thank you. Bob, do you have something?
I was just going to follow up on the kayak launching area. I think the original dock, which was not ADA accessible, was really just got old and was dangerous and was taken down. And at one point, Park and Rec was looking at putting an ADA gateway or gangplank and dock in, but that proved prohibitively expensive. Also, because there really isn't good parking right there. So we're all better off going to Piper Park and launching from there. I just wanted, because there are a lot of new people on the program, mention again the idea of the Corte Madera Community Foundation working with Park and Rec to do an upgrade at Makey Park, improve the landscaping and some of the ADA access issues to that. I think over the years, that area is going to be more and more important. I believe the Alto tunnel will get opened up, although it might not be in my lifetime, but I believe at some point that will be opened up and that we will see much more in the way of bike traffic going through there, especially with the advent of e-bikes. So I'm looking to work with you and Park and Rec Commission to see if we can get some funding through the Corte Madera Community Foundation in order to really do a public-private partnership to upgrade Makey Park.
Thank you. I think maybe to add to Bob's comment regarding Makey Park and the potential improvements there and seeing if there's a priority and support for that. Right now, that's the location that's utilized for a lot of the summer concerts and kind of a natural location for special events. So that's something we can also talk about if there aren't any additional ideas or a lot of suggestions at this point.
Back to water access briefly. Now over in Piper Park in Larkspur, there is a dock out there, but that's quite a trek to take a canoe or something out there, maybe if you had wheels on it. But I would think there is something a site closer to the water. That's, what is that, 3/8 of a mile walk out there from the parking lot to that dock?
I don't have details, but I believe Larkspur Recreation manages two points of water access.
I'd have to think on that. On the other side of Corte Madera Creek, there is one little dock there, teeny tiny, a little parklet, no street parking practically. But that's about it as far as I know, no other place.
Any other general comments, suggestions? What can we do to increase satisfaction and participation other than things that we've talked about throughout this meeting? Not hearing any. What's motivated you all to attend today? We want to hear why you want to be here. What can we help you support?
Well, this is Kara and Russ, and unfortunately we were able to jump on the meeting a little bit late, but certainly the topics around the swimming pool and the athletic turf fields are very important to our family. Again, we love Corte Madera in this community, and I just feel that it's, in some respects, we've had to look at clubs outside of the community in order to have year-round activities, such as, the soccer fields not being turf. Some of the clubs outside of Corte Madera offer other playing soccer fields. And so that was one of the reasons that we ended up leaving the Corte Madera Football Club and going to an outside group because of the artificial turf fields and being able to practice year round. And same thing with the swimming pools. Again, as adults swimming, we pretty much have to go outside and join a private club. And those clubs are outside of Corte Madera. And then certainly for the Tidal Wave swim team, it's just becoming increasingly difficult to get swimming time during the times that are available after school for the children. So those topics really sparked my interest. I wish I would have lobbied to have more people on this call so that they could voice their concerns the way all of our peers are on today.
Thank you.
And to echo what Kara said, not only can our kids that play soccer not play all year round, they can't even sometimes play during the soccer season. They get forced onto the blacktop or, because it rains, and it's not like, oh, it's just that day because it's raining. The fields are a mess for a week. So it totally messes with their practice schedule. And then you've got all these teams trying to practice on the blacktop. So some of the practices end up getting canceled. And it's not fair to the kids that are trying to get exercise and improve and become better at their sport, that they live someplace where the fields can't support that. Yeah.
Well, and then there's also a greater chance of injury, in my opinion. I've certainly played
for sure
soccer and overall sports on the fields, and just because of the wear and tear that the grass has to take throughout the weather conditions, and then with so many different people on it, all of the divots in the fields and kind of the potholes, if you will, through the grass become ever increasingly difficult, I think, to play around. And I think it is more prone to possible safety issues and injury issues for the players.
Yeah. And as far as I know, people are talking about flooding and drainage with turf. My understanding is that the way the turf is laid, that it still drains. So, I mean, I don't know if people have enough knowledge of turf to be, obviously, I guess people need more information about that, but I don't think that, there's turf fields all over Marin County and Sonoma County, and, if they were flooding, they wouldn't have done it. So I don't think that that's an issue.
I have heard there's a consideration of some think that the natural field, it absorbs the water better. So with the artificial turf, you can drain the water off of the field, but it's not able to retain it as much. And an issue with the town park there, that lower canal, when they had that storm back in October, that thing came very close to coming over the top. And I don't know the science well enough about it, but that's something that I've heard.
That's also my concern, James. It's not really about the drain off the turf so much as how we're going to control that runoff, because the turf is not absorbing the water anymore. And how, as long as we can be mindful of controlling the level of that canal when it rains with the turf, I don't foresee a problem. But I am sensitive to that, given that I live near and around that creek.
Yeah. Hello. Can I say something to that? So I think it's a little premature to talk about drainage when we haven't even established whether we're going to move forward with the planning process on that. However, you know, keep in mind the soils around here, when you have geotech, it's mostly clays and they're non-absorbent anyway, and you're only a foot or two above the water table at those locations, if not. And so whatever infrastructure is put in will be substantially better at draining. The creek behind your yard there is part of the stormwater drainage system the town has, which is another master planning process that's going to happen this year. And it's because of pump stations. So it's all artificially drained here anyway. So just keep that in mind. And, you know, turf actually does have several layers, a couple feet deep sometimes, of different types of drain rock, and it can be very well designed and probably better in the long run. But you know, that's for later. Ultimately, I appreciate everyone talking about their concerns, because ultimately, you know, I think if the community just establishes that they want that, we should address them appropriately and try to solve all those problems, so it isn't this thing that it has been traditionally. That's what I feel. And I hope we do talk more about Minky Park. I've two really great leaders in the town that have done a lot for the community have brought it up in this free time, both Pat and Bob. And that makes me think that it's an underserved, it needs to be understood better, and that we can really improve some of the higher cultural events by improving that facility and doing a really good job over there. And I hope everybody sees them and tries to emphasize, you know, that project as well. So that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you. We'll move to Bob and then Joe.
Well, I was just going to comment that, as Charles said, you know, with money and engineering, you can do a lot, and that would involve drainage either for the natural grass or for the artificial turf. And as he mentioned, the level of the canal is controlled by the High Canal Pump Station, which was installed to prevent the flooding that occurred in the 1980s. So we seem to be in good shape from the standpoint of ultimate flood protection there, but the drainage issue is something that would have to be engineered. I just really wanted to comment that I appreciated you and the commission for putting the survey together, for getting it out, for getting such good response. And I've appreciated listening to everybody's comments. It's given me a lot more to think about than, you know, just some of the priorities that I have. So thank
you, Bob. Looks like we lost Joe, but when he logs back in, we'll go to him. Are there any other things that we'd like to discuss right now, or people would like to bring up? We're at 11:41. Okay, I'll do my conclusion. Again, these types of ideas, especially things that are less of a commitment or can be an observation that we can correct as a town or as a department. We always welcome people to come and give public comment at the Parks and Recreation Commission. But if it's something that's impacting multiple departments, it's really helpful to have these conversations during the town chats. So if you can attend a town hall chat when they resume, if you have an observation or something in town that you'd like addressed, that is a great forum for discussion and feedback. And you usually have a couple of directors for representing different departments and as in addition to the mayor and town manager. So it's a great opportunity to get heard and learn a little bit more. Again, more information is going to be posted on our master plan website as far as next steps, any additional comments. I think I'm going to develop a survey monkey using the polls that we utilized last night with a larger group so that people can have additional feedback so that we can evaluate that after the fact. We just hope that people take it just once, but look for that information on our master plan page of the Parks and Recreation site. But in conclusion, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your feedback and insights. We emphasize that no decisions will be made or committed to as a result of these particular meetings, and that all feedback will be used to conclude the master plan project and outline priorities for staff to focus on going forward, as well as the town. Specific projects will continue to be vetted, and the community will have an opportunity to provide feedback during potential considerations and possible planning and/or development of those specific projects. So again, thank you all for being here. We really appreciate your time. It's extremely valuable and important to us.
Thank you, Ashley, for doing this. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Good day.
Have a good day.
Hi, Ashley. It's Mike here. Sorry,
Hey, Mike.
I've just been able to listen in. I tried. I wanted to just connect with you. I'm assuming that you're the PR director for Corte Madera now, not Senator Phil?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. I tried texting your old phone number, but I don't have it. So it'd be nice to just connect so I can kind of catch up with some of the stuff that was, I think, since I came in and out so intermittently through these last two meetings.
Absolutely. We appreciate that you're on shift over at Santa Fe Fire.
I tried. There's no chat function with my phone. I was going to try to reach out with you via chat, but it didn't work. So I didn't know if what's the best way to get a hold of you, at least so I can kind of get the notes and stuff and everything else that you guys have been talking about.
I will send you an email.
Okay. Do you have just, I guess, to use my work email from Santa Fe? I don't know that you have.
Yep. And then you can connect with me however you'd like to.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay.
All right. Have a good one.